welcome to your Transmute Yourself weekly live show where we talk about topics related to fear of commitment so that you can create your own fulfilling relationship. This is your host, Javier Peñalba, and today we'll talk about 5 principles to deal better with triggers when having commitment phobia. Now, let me give you a little introduction on this. When you're dealing with symptoms of commitment phobia and you're in a relationship, sometimes it may be that you feel okay, that you feel fine for a couple of days. It may even be a couple of weeks, right? But then something happens, and then you feel that you go down completely. And you don't know, at times you know what it was, at times you simply are feeling strange and you start getting all those thoughts and a little bit of that anxiety of running away or fighting or withdrawing. And it can get very confusing at those times, like what was it really that's bothering me, right? So usually what happens is that there is a trigger, there's something. In most cases it can also be, and I will talk a little bit about that as well, it can also be emotions from the past, what's sometimes called like the pain body, that it simply comes out in such a way that you feel in a way maybe a little bit bad or anxious, and then you put that blame, right, that the fault directly on your partner. It can be that, but usually there's something that your partner said or an event, etc. So we'll deal with that part when we have a clear or maybe not that clear trigger. And that's what these 5 principles will be about. All right, so the first principle is that response to triggers are a protection mechanism of something that we think is bad or inappropriate, right? So the trigger is basically something that, again, your partner might be doing or an event. Let's just give the example that you're with your partner and then she says, you're just walking in the park and she says, oh, when we move in together, we might do this or that, right? And that triggers you, right? And at that moment, you don't say anything. You simply keep acting as if nothing happened and just do your usual things, right? But then what's happening at the subconscious level is that what she said is something that made you scared, is something that you think is bad, because you're interpreting, even if you're not thinking consciously, you might be interpreting that she's saying that she wants to move in a month, and you might interpret that as if she's giving you pressure for doing something that you don't want to, and that she's sort of controlling your life, right? So all of these things might come subconsciously, and they're protecting you. Again, these reactions, you might feel a little bit tense, you might feel as if wanting to run away, and this is protecting you from feeling controlled or from feeling anything that you don't want to feel, and that creates some type of fear, right? So that's why we're afraid sometimes of talking about commitment topics or something, because we're protecting that part of us that doesn't want to be and doesn't want to feel controlled, right? So in essence, that is because there is something that happened in the past, right? It's something that we learned when we were growing up, or that we developed given our experiences that we didn't like. Let's say that our parents were very controlling with us, and we built a little wall or like a protection mechanism around our heart or somewhere where you protect that part so that you don't feel that again. And that's why we react in a certain way. Basically, when we develop that mechanism, we're putting anything that falls within the boundaries of the belief that was created there as bad. So control, anyone wants to control you, you put that directly into that little box of that's bad, and then you want to protect yourself. So that's the first principle. You have to understand that it's just a protection mechanism from something that you deem bad and that was created in the past. Now you can start reflecting, is the situation really the same today as it was in the past? And usually it's not. You have a lot more independence and freedom today. Let's talk about the principle number 2. The second principle is awareness of yourself when being triggered is key. So whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, and the context in which it happens. You can even have some sort of map of yourself so you understand yourself better. Usually what happens is that when you're triggered, you want to avoid conflict. It can be one of the strategies, just like escaping any probability of conflict, and you act as if nothing happened, right? But what happens is that you might tend to repress, to suppress completely, or to fight whatever it is that you're feeling, so that you don't bring that to a conversation. So it's very important just to have that awareness of yourself at that moment, because what can happen is that if you don't deal with it in the moment, by first of all being aware of how you're feeling and how you're thinking, then it can be that it creates an impression for the future. So you forget about it. That's simply that in a couple of days you don't even remember what it was that brought you down again and put you in this low mood, or or brought again the anxiety. You might have forgotten already. So it's important to just catch it in the moment as it's happening. Just simply be aware of it, feel whatever it is that you're feeling. And it's also important to see the context. The context might be, are you tired? Are you stressed? Did you have a bad day at work? Are you fulfilled with your life at that moment, or with your work, or with your social life, whatever it is? See the full context, because it's easier to be triggered when you're in a stress reaction. And if you're already stressed, right? And then your partner tells you something that touches that little wound that you have right there, it's a lot easier to be triggered, right? So just having that full awareness of yourself, you can even have a list of what are those things that trigger you from, for example, your relationship, and that will help you to have a lot more clarity about what's happening, so that next time it happens, it will not catch you by surprise. You will sort of understand yourself better, and it will be a lot smoother dealing with it. So the third one is that, third principle, each trigger is an opportunity to let go of a part of you that is holding you back from being happy. What happens is that when we're feeling whatever reaction we feel, right, when there's a trigger, when there's this stimulus from, it might be a thought, or it might be something that, again, your partner did or said, then that's just coming to this, that part of you, part of your psyche, let's call it, part of your ego, which is composed of beliefs, ideas, which are very well rooted within you, right? Some of that just comes out at that moment. And that's an opportunity to let go of that. What we usually do is we fight it, we repress it again, we try to avoid it, avoid people that that do those things that trigger us, etc. But the thing is, that will happen again. It can be very easy that can happen with another person. So it is at that moment, after you're aware of it, that you can simply observe and also let go of that part of you. Where I would say originally, when we're born, and as an essence actually, we are peace, we are love. Anything that interrupts that peace and that love, that there is something in our psyche that is preventing us from being happy. So when you have a trigger and that causes a reaction, that's giving you an opportunity to be happy, to let go of that part of your ego that is preventing you from being happy. So how do you do that? You observe yourself, you let that energy flow within you. Let's say again that your partner said something about moving in a couple of, some time, right? Or she might say, look at that old couple, I hope that we are like that as well, that we get to get old right together, and that triggers you. So what's the solution again? Based on these principles that I'm talking about right now, you observe it, right? You are very aware of what you're feeling, and then you don't fight it. That's the main thing. You stop fighting what you've been fighting your whole life, and you open your heart. You simply breathe in, you relax your heart, and you let that energy just flow. Simply let it flow. Then you can very intuitively and consciously recognize what is it really that's bothering you, and let it go. Let that go. That part of your ego simply fall back, and you can just observe it, observe the whole situation, the whole emotions, and the energy that's flowing from the seat of your consciousness. That means from behind the emotions, behind the thoughts. That's where you really are. You are a consciousness, right? And when you observe all of that from that seat of that consciousness, you're not identifying yourself with the reaction or with the thoughts. And then you can simply let that go. It can take practice, right? But the more you do it, and the less you identify yourself with your reactions to triggers, the happier you'll become and the more connected you'll be to your essence. Then you will be a lot more objective, and you will know what to say afterwards. It will be easier to take action consciously and not based on an emotion, which just makes it very subjective and very emotional. And sometimes we tend to do silly things when we're in this state. Now, the principle number 4, and this is a little bit related to principle number 3. It is, if something triggers you, it describes something about you that you can work on yourself. What happens is that we usually focus so much on what we think is the trigger that we forget about the actual origin of it, or of the reaction of it, which is ourselves. So when we are triggered, we get into a stress response, and we get into a fight or flight response, meaning we want to run away, or we want to fight, or we want to freeze, right? And at that moment, all of your energy and your focus is narrowed down to the trigger, to whatever you perceive as the cause of you feeling that way. But the trigger is simply the person or whatever situation that's pushing a button. But the reality is that the button is in you, right? That button is in you. And again, if it's not that person or that situation that will trigger it, it will be another one. So yes, the easiest thing might be just replace that person, change your partner, right? Or replace that work, change work, or change something externally, which is valid. Sometimes it is okay. But the issue comes when we do that without having worked within us first, without having done the inner work first. We're pretty much working externally so that we can remove something that's bothering us within us. But the most conscious way to do that, and most sustainable, I would say, is to first work it within you. Check what it is that's bothering you. Let that energy flow. Let that part of your ego fall, or work it out however you can before taking an action that can be very emotional and very subjective, and that takes you away completely from objectivity and from seeing things as they really are. So that's number 4. Again, if something triggers you, look back at yourself. The person or the situation just pushes you, but you have the button, and it's your responsibility, your duty to root it out and to work it out, not the person that's in front of you or the situation. Finally, this principle is especially if what's triggering you is a person. See the person in front of you, and not only what bothers you about that person. Again, when we're in a stress reaction, we focus so much on the trigger and on whatever it's bothering us from the person, if it's a person again, that we forget to see the whole picture. And that person in front of you might have issues, right? Might have emotional problems, or like we all do, right? Might have thoughts, might have anything that makes her a human being. And again, if you see the holistic view of who's in front of you, it can give you a little bit of compassion so that you stop blaming and simply attacking back or running away. This sets this allows you to center yourself a lot more easily. And if you want to take it one step beyond that, one step further, do not just see the person in front of you, see the soul of the person in front of you. That really brings peace. You can see that your partner is doing something that bothers you. She might, for example, be speaking too much, or she's making you go and pick her up, or him, somewhere at a moment in which you wanted to do something else, and that triggers you, right? So if you just remember, first of all, it's a person, right, with her needs, etc. And at the same time, there's a soul behind that. And that soul is as perfect as you are. Actually, that soul and you are the same. We're all part of the same essence. That if you want to just take it even a step deeper and further, we're all part, or we're all a reflection of God, a part of God. And when you're judging whatever's triggering you of that person, you're judging God. You're judging yourself as well, because you also have some of those things. We're all together in this. In a way, we're all on this boat together, finding out who we really are, finding out our purpose, and trying to be happy, right? And the other person, whoever's triggering you, is also trying to do that in her own way, right? So when you see that whole picture, the person, the soul, even the God behind everything, you will find it's easier to be compassionate and to have peace, to feel that peace that's within us at all times. And that will encourage you, I think, as well, to keep letting go of those parts of your ego that are preventing you from being happy, because when you can connect to that peace, you don't want to leave it, right? It's our essence, it's who we are. And abandoning that and sacrificing that peace just because of an idea, or because we're focusing on mistakes and what we perceive as wrong, it's not worth it. And you'll realize it once you can really connect to that peace. Okay, so these are the principles of today for dealing with triggers. I really hope that you have enjoyed it. If you have, I invite you to comment and to like this video, to share if you can as well, and to recommend my channel if that's something that you believe is worth, right? If you're getting value from my channel. And I really want to thank you for having been here. I will see you very, very soon. Thank you.